Hello, this is Mike at Game from Scratch, and welcome back. As you may be able to guess from the screen up in front of you, today we're going to be working with Blender. A couple weeks ago, I did a video called 1 Hour with Blender and Game from Scratch, and the whole idea behind it was a 1 hour introduction to using Blender. There's an overview, showed you how to install, navigate, the different functionality built into Blender, sort of walked you through all of it, made you comfortable with the user interface, but didn't go into much detail. At the end of that, I asked if people would be interested in further follow-up 1 hour segments from Game from Scratch. Things like 1 hour with modeling, 1 hour with texturing, 1 hour with animating in Blender. And the one that seemed to be by far the most popular was modeling. And makes sense, it's the thing I enjoy doing the most too, so that's where we're going to start. Today we are going to spend exactly 1 hour with Blender covering as much information as I can about modeling. Now, it's a very big subject, and you can't cover it in an hour, but you can cover a whole hell of a lot in an hour's time frame. And so I'm going to try and do as much of a brain dump as I can to you. Now, I'm going to assume you have obviously very little prior knowledge with Blender, but I do assume you watched the previous video. If you haven't, I'll link it in the comments below, or that you already know how to navigate around. So if you see me doing stuff and you're like, oh, how the hell did he do that? That's because it was covered in the video before. I'm not going to retread that, otherwise these 1 hour videos would become 40 minutes of video and 20 minutes of recap, basically an episode of Dragon Ball Z. We don't want that. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to cover as much as we can about modeling. I have a pretty good list here of things I want to cover in terms of topics. And like I said, an hour is not a lot of time. So let's get started. I have 58 minutes remaining. Let's go. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a bit more friendly UI to what we want to do. Let's collapse this down. Now, first off, if you have no idea what I'm doing right there, watch the first video. It's the kind of stuff that was already covered. Now we have a much more modeling-friendly view to work with. Now, next up, I want it to be clear. I want everything gone, so let's get rid of it. Here is a basic Blender scene, nothing in it. And we're going to be dealing specifically with modeling today, mostly game-oriented, but obviously the way things work these days actually is even films use a lot of the same techniques that games do. You take your low-res screen or low-res model and upscale it. It's kind of how things work more and more. It used to be people used a combination of technologies, things like B-splines or NURB surfaces or metaballs, and nobody uses that stuff for the most part anymore. Splines a bit, mostly to make lattices or cages that are ultimately converted into polygons anyways. So today we're going to deal specifically with polygon modeling only. So you come up here and we're going to start with actually adding a surface. So you see here there's the other options. There's curves and surfaces and metaballs like I just talked about. But what we want is a mesh. This is a polygon mesh, and we'll start by recreating our cube. Now, of course, you started with this cube, and a lot of things do start with a cube. There's actually, it's called box modeling. So the technique is literally named box modeling. It's so common for people to start with a box or a cube. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Here it's back, and that's why Blender starts with a cube in the middle of the scene. So you'll notice it was actually created bang about the midpoint. And let me just delete this for a second, show you why. See this guy right here, that's your pivot. A very confusing point in Blender, but a pivot is sort of like your active point. So if I left click here on the screen, right, and now I go ahead and add my surface again, it gets created at that pivot point. Now, some operations also happen around the pivot. The pivot's a neat thing to understand. Not sure how much detail we're going to get into it, but the pivot is what determines where the active item or modifier occurs. So it's a key thing to get, and the fact that it's mapped to your left key or your left mouse button can be a little confusing at times. So let's get rid of that guy. Go back about our pivot right here, around the center-ish, and we'll add our mesh back in again. So here's your polygon mesh. Now there's something that's very critical to understand about Blender right away is operating modes. And right now we are in the object operating mode. And as you can see, we have our cube, and we're dealing with the cube as an entire entity. So I can move it, I can rotate it, and I can, okay, why are my keys not working? All right, sorry. Move it, rotate it, and scale it. And I'm dealing with all of it, this entire object as an object. It's right down here, object mode. Now what you often want to do is switch into edit mode. Now you're dealing with the pieces that make the cube. So the object mode deals with the entire entity, edit mode deals with the pieces that make the entity up. So when you're modeling, generally you're working in edit mode. And here you're dealing with one of three basic building blocks or Lego pieces. The fundamental pieces of 3D work are, number one, right click here and I'll select it. That's a vertex. A vertex can be thought of as just simply a point in 3D space. Now you take one or more two or more vertex or vertices. So here, shift click. So I now have here, I'll use the front ones. Two vertexes selected, two vertices selected. Now what I have in between them is an edge. Let's switch over to edge mode. We got a couple key guys down here. So right now we're in vertex mode. Let's switch to edge mode here. And now when I right click to select, I'm selecting an edge. An edge is two or more connected vertices. Okay? Now finally you have faces or polygons, depending on the reference that they want to use. And this is three or more edges connected and solidified in between them. So those are your three different building blocks. You have your vertex, your edge, and your face. Now I'm going to throw a couple of hotkeys at you that are very important, and we're going to cover all of the things we just dealt with. Right, first off, you have object and edit mode. It's very common to switch between the two, and there's a hotkey for that. It's tab. So I hit tab. It's the same as hitting this menu. Okay. So object mode, hit tab. I'm in edit mode. Hit tab again. I'm in object mode. Critical hotkey to learn. It's the same as coming down here and clicking, but you're going to switch between those two all the time. And while you're hovering near that tab key, also learn control and tab. You hit control tab, it pops up this, oops. Control and tab pops up this guy. And this is to switch between these three different modes. Now you can also use, if I do control tab, the number of the menu item. So 1, 2, and 3. So if I do control tab and then the 1 key, I switch to vertex mode. Control tab, then the 2 key, I'm in edge mode. And then control tab and 3 key, I'm in face mode. Those hotkeys are ones you're really going to want to learn, because once you get used to hovering on that side of your keyboard, it's very, very fast. Now if you are the type that hates hotkeys unbelievably, once again, you control object mode, or the equivalent of tab here, and control tab 1 is the same as clicking, where did it go? Oh, I need to go back to edge mode. Control tab 1 is the same as clicking this, control tab 2 is the same as clicking this, and control tab 3 is the same as clicking this. All right, so those are your three basic building blocks: your vertex, your edge, and your face. Now the next thing, there's one more, and it's very critical, and it's very easily to show with a sphere. So let's create one. We'll get rid of our cube for a second, and instead we are going to add a mesh and then a UV sphere. Here's a sphere in object mode, right? Now we're going to switch over into edit mode, and you'll see we're in faces, so you can see all the different faces, etc. Now let's switch over to edge mode. Control tab 2, and now we're in edge mode. I can select a single edge like so. Now I can also hold down Alt and grab a single edge like this. And this here, this guy is a critical thing to understand. This is called an edge loop. This is just a continuous series of edges. The way an edge loop is determined is as long as an edge continues and is bisected by another edge. So like think of a four-way intersection like, here, I'll just select the four-way intersection like that. Let me turn that guy off so you can see it. You have a situation like this. An edge loop is continuous as long as there is a right and a left-hand branch and it doesn't go. So as you go, so there's a right and a left, but it kept going. There's a right and a left, but it kept going. There's a right and a left, but it kept going all the way around. So I hit Alt-Shift, it can figure out this whole thing is an edge loop. Now there's also something else called an edge ring. You're using a little bit less, but it's the same thing, just this way. Generally not used quite as often as edge loops, but and directly related. It's basically just perpendicular to an edge loop, but an edge loop is a critical thing to understand. So I'll click. Now in a sphere, it's very clear because they go in circles, but when you start talking about a nice organic shape that bends and twists. An edge loop allows you to very quickly add detail or take it away. I'll show you later on when we do an edge loop and slide how fast you can add detail into an object. But the nice thing is, with a nice clean edge loop, when you start doing things like smoothing it and adding more detail and such, it adds it very smoothly. Now when you use an edge loop, a nice well-defined edge loop is also a nice well-defined surface. So when you animate it, for example, if you have a nice bicep done well with a good clean edge loop, it'll animate nicely as you're adding more detail to it. So clean edge loops are the key to modeling, way beyond the topic I can cover here, but it's one of those things to be aware of. So in addition to your vertex, your edge, and your face, be aware of the edge loop. And once again, you can select an entire edge loop by alt-right-clicking a single edge on it, and you can select multiple items of any kind. So if I go back to, say, vertex, and there, hold down Shift and keep clicking, you can select multiple. Same deal if I switch back then to edges, and you'll notice as you switch types, we switch between modes, the selection type automatically transfers. So I did have these vertexes selected, and then once I switched over, it automatically switched to the edges that correspond. But now if I click here, and I say hold down Alt, so I select my edge loop, well, if I hit Shift and then Alt click another one, I get that loop, and that loop, and that loop. So you can multiple select by clicking Shift and then right-clicking the object you want as well. So an edge loop is a very critical thing to understand in time, but really it's just a collection of edges. So it's not really a different primitive. The primitives are vertex, edge, and face, not edge loops. But an edge loop is critical to understand, and we'll use it a little bit more later on. So keep that in mind. Now a really key thing to understand is selection modes. And I just showed you some of that. So what you saw was right-click to select something, Shift right-click to add or grow your selection. Now there's a couple other things to be aware of here as well. One of the ones you're going to want to know right off the hop, and this works in object and edit mode, is A. A is select all, and A again is select none. And you're going to use it all the time. So right here I've got this edge is selected, and I want to get rid of that. Well, if I press A once, it clears it. Again, selects all. Okay, so that's kind of like a toggle between clear selection and select all. So here you can select every face that's selected, and then A again, and it's selected none. So if you have a selection going, like so, and you want to clear it, you hit A. But then if you want to select everything, you hit A again. And if you've got nothing selected, and then you hit A, it selects all. So A kind of does double duty between clear selection and select all. Once again, you can see it's all bunched to that left in your tab again. It's very left right hand focused on the keyboard. A lot of it though was based around the number pad, which are becoming increasingly rare, so hopefully they move away from the right handed side a bit. But you'll see a lot of the Blender keys are bunched to the left, and it makes sense. It's very fast with the idea that on the right hand side you're using the mouse, and it works pretty well. So once you start learning these keys, you will speed up. Okay, so that's your two basic modes. I'll press A again to clear my selection. Now oftentimes though, you're also going to want to select just using the mouse. Now we saw individual selecting, but this can get pretty slow. Even with the Shift, I start coming in and painting these selections, and it works. But a lot of times you're going to want to do like a multi-select of some kind. And there's a couple of options here. First off, there's box select. So, like select nothing, I hit B and hold it down. You'll see I got a crosshair now. And then I left click and drag, like so. So I've got the B key held down right now. And then left clicked and dragged, I just selected in a box. Okay, very critical. Now, next one is, I press A again and clear that. Oh, escape to move out, A to clear. And now there's also C, which is a circle select. I press C, and now I've got like a radius around my cursor that you can see. And this is sort of like holding down Shift and clicking things, but you're painting it instead. So you've got a circle radius, so now I can like paint my selection, like so. So that's C, and it just gives me the circle for selecting things. Now, press C again. Sorry, right click to clear that out. So C, circle select, right click, done. And then A, clear it all out. Now, another thing you can want to do sometimes is increase the radius of that circle. So right here I'm selecting a fair bit. Now if I use my scroll wheel with the C key held down, I can select more or I can select less. So here, I'm going to select very fast. Now what you'll also notice is, let me spin this guy in 3D. So I'll right click to finish my selection. And we look, and we see, okay, our background did not get selected there. This is toggleable. Over here you'll see limit selection to visible. And a lot of times, well, you know, to be honest, the mode that you're going to want is highly dependent on what you're working on at the time. But sometimes you're going to find yourself not wanting to select. Like here, we only selected visible. So as I was painting it, we were only getting the front side of this object. If I toggle this guy over, so I click this button here. So now I'm selecting back. You can see through our shape all of a sudden. So now I'm going to clear my selection. I'm going to put my C back on with this huge circle, and we're just going to do that. All right. So now when I rotate it, all right, right click, finish, and rotate around, and you'll see we selected both sides. So this determines if you've got this guy right here, if you've got it enabled, only what you can see is selected. So the back side of your object is not selected. You turn it off, and now you can see through your object, but it'll select both sides. At the same time, if I click this guy back on again, so even with that on, if I want to have that 3D look through thing, there's an X-ray mode you can press, is Z. Z puts you into, well, see-through mode. So now you're seeing back faces and front. I press Z again, and I'm only seeing the front. So that combination, this guy here toggles if you're selecting only what you can see or everything that's under where you were. So in addition to our B box select, like him, all right, what did I do? First off, I accidentally moved my pivot. So B and drag to select, okay, and then A to clear our selection, C for circle paint, or hold down C and then scroll wheel to change your radius, and then draw. There's one other option, and that is holding down the control key and then your left mouse button, and then you can lasso paint select, like so. So clear that out. So just hold down the control key and draw around the shape that you want to select. Very nice for precision selection, and done. And once again, that will be affected by this guy. So here it's turned off. So if I orbit, you'll see we didn't get everything. And if I turn that guy back on and hold down control, and then we look at the other side, you'll see we got both sides. So those guys combine, and then once again, A to clear your selection. So those are your basic selection modes. Very important to get. Once again, you can hit the Z key to switch into like X-ray mode. And you can use this guy to toggle what is and what is not selected based off of where you're looking. Now, the final thing that we're going to cover here, not really selection related, but it is important, especially for things like see-through, is you have different vision modes or display or render modes for your display port. So right here is probably material mode. Okay, so you have these different options. First off, you can come down, wireframe. And this is just the mesh that makes up your object. There's no texturing or anything applied to it. Now, next up, oops, clicked the wrong guy. Solid, which is basically just your wireframe, but all connected, so you're seeing the faces in between. And then you start getting into the ones with the texturing on them. This will show texture maps. This one on top will show materials. A material is a little bit beyond texture map. There's some procedural materials built into Blender, things like say a marble render or a sky render material. Those aren't necessarily textures, so there is a distinguishing factor there. And then finally, you've got rendered. And rendered basically does micro rendering of your scene as it goes. I deleted the lights and such, so you're just going to see a black blob. This guy you really can't edit in. It's more for like real-time-ish previews. And as you can see here, it's not the fastest thing you'll ever deal with. And it's not really that useful right now, but it's one step short of doing a full render yourself to see how something will look. So let's go on back to solid. So those are your different display modes. All right, there. Most of the time you'll probably either deal with, I almost always leave it in solid or material solid or textured personally. Because if solid doesn't work for me and I need to see through something like I would for a wireframe, then I hit Z and I get the same basic effect. I just find it cleaner, but you can use whichever modes you want, obviously. It's fast to switch between them, and you can have multiple windows with in different modes. So it's all tied to the particular view you're looking at. So what can be quite common is if you're working on this guy, and then up here, say you wanted a preview, you could actually do a full-time rendered. So here you can still do your editing in normal speed. So let's grab a face and move it out, like so. And then you'll notice this one slowly updates, but with a lot more detail. So that is your option. Let's close that guy. Where's that guy out? And that's that. So those are your selections. So we've covered primitives and selections. Now let's actually get on to modeling. All right. Now, when you're modeling, it's amazing how little you're actually working with. You're normally working with a fairly small amount of tools and making more and more complex shapes. It's actually the basics of modeling are quite simple, which is very cool. Now let's go back to uh, object mode. Come on, object mode. Delete this guy, and let's go back to a cube. So move my pivot back to center-ish, and then add mesh cube. All right, here we go. So let's go back to edit, and let me show you one thing straight away. We're in face mode right now. As you saw earlier, you can use G to grab and move. Now, unfortunately, I turned this guy off. So this is your widget control. Turn it back on. I want my widget. So you can use G to move like that, or along particular axis. So blue corresponds with the Z axis. We're currently quite upside down right now. Let's make that make more sense. Your Z axis, your Y is your green axis, and your X is your red axis, and you can move along each one individually. But as you can see, a face can be moved and manipulated that way. You can also, let's hit S for scaling. We can scale it in either direction, should we wish, or you can use R to rotate. And then ditto, this is true for edges as well. All three operators work for an edge. We can scale an edge, and we can rotate an edge. Now, once again, let's go back to vertex. And vertex is mostly the same thing. You got a single vertex, you can move it. Now, rotating it, sure you can do it. And scale, sure you can do it. But it has absolutely no meaning. You can't rotate a single point. Now, if you do select multiple vertexes, though, so let's shift click, now scaling makes sense. And rotating makes sense. So the transforms you use, these three guys right here, are just as applicable when dealing with components as they are when you're dealing with the object itself. Okay, now let's take a quick moment to talk about entering controls here. This is a valuable thing. I may have covered it in the previous tutorial. I don't remember at this point, to be honest, but it's important enough that you should be aware of it. Let's get our screen here and focus and N. So N brings up this properties window. So you kind of, it's a dynamically generated property settings. Let me go back to object mode and I'll show you this firsthand. You'll notice right here, there's X, Y, and Z keyboard inputters that you can put in for direct entry. And let's say we want to move this guy right back to the origin. So 0, 0, and 0. There you go. So you can actually keyboard entries wise directly enter the rotation scale and rotation scale and location right here. You can also lock an axis if you want. So now we can no longer move on the x-axis. You don't even see it. See, I've got 2 available. I unlock it, and you got 3 available. Now, remember before I said to move is G. So G and then move. S is to scale, and then R is to rotate. Now, you can also combine these with letters and numbers for defining the axis to deal with and the amount to deal by. And it's easiest to show you with rotation. So let me show you something really neat, really quick. And the keyboard stuff will make you faster, so you kind of get used to doing this stuff. But right here says my y-axis. What I want to do is I want to rotate this guy 90 degrees about here. Now I could grab it, and I could go over here, and I could say enter rotation of 90, like so. Let me undo that. Or you can just come in and hit your R, like that. So I'm saying rotate. Now I'm going to hit Y to say which axis to deal. And you see this green line just appeared to show you that's where we're working around. And then I'm just going to type 90. Exact same effect. And you can do the same thing. Scale Z 10. So we just scaled 10 times down the Z axis. Let's undo that. So you can use this combination of the hotkey to do something, and then the axis to limit it, and then you can go one step further and actually put the number to specify the amount. Or I could just do rotate Y and then manipulate with the mouse, and it's still locking me down the Y. Or rotate Z, and I'm locked down the Z axis. Very handy. Those keyboard shortcuts are going to make you faster, so they are worth learning. But anyways, back into the object mode. So as you saw, you can use any of these operators to move things around as you want. Now let's look at some of the actual manipulators or the modifiers that we can deal with. There's a couple of keyboard shortcuts or menu items to be aware of. And first off is this guy. Very handy set of hotkeys. A lot of what we're going to deal with is available here. So if you're more a visual person than a keyboard person, look over here in your transform window. And if this guy doesn't appear, you can toggle that on with the T key or by clicking this little plus on the left-hand side of the screen. But that guy has a lot of shortcuts to stuff we're going to be working with. And as Blender's evolving a bit, they're cleaning up and focusing this guy a little bit faster. So you can look here for most of the things you want. Now on top of that, there's a context menu called W. And this quick brings up the specials menu. And there's a lot of stuff that's context sensitive to what you need will appear there. Now, there's another set of menus to be aware of that kind of strip down this, but bring it right into view. And it's all based on what you're working on. So right now I'm working on the vertices. And there's a quick vertex menu of Control plus V. Yes, paste. But Control and V in Blender brings up this menu. And these are operations that only happen for vertices. And it's right at your mouse point. So if we want to slide a vertice, like so, we just go vertex, slide, and we're in slide mode. Let's undo that. Actually, let's just get rid of all this right now. We've created oops, let's switch to object mode, and we'll do a delete. And let's create a new cube again. So, at the same time, switch back to, all right, tab, Control tab 2, edge mode, like so. Control E brings up the edge specific mode. And then if you're in face mode, like so, Control F brings up the face mode. Very fast, and all of the stuff that every single thing we're working on, except for, I believe, edge loop and cut, is available in these quick menus. But you can also get them mesh, and then you go up to faces. This is the face menu. This is the same as pressing Control and F. Edges, this is the same as pressing Control and E. Vertices, same as Control and V. But another set of hotkeys definitely worth learning, and that's where most of the stuff that we're dealing with now is, or it's available down here. Okay? So you saw by manipulating the vertices, the edges, and the faces, you can shape things into what you want. But next thing we need to do is start adding geometry to our scene. A cube isn't much. You're kind of going to want it to build more out of that. And one of the most common ways is extruding. Now extrude you can do by hitting E or coming up here and clicking extrude. So E, and you can see this blue line just appeared, shows the axis that we're extruding upon, and drag. So you can think of extrude the same as like pull. So you're pulling out that face. And it works for edges as well, and vertices, but for the most part, it's something you do on faces. And that's how we add more details. So now that I've pulled this guy out, what I can go ahead and do is, say, just hit S to scale it and bring it down. Oops. So there's a very quick way to add some more geometry. So I could grab another face, and I can do an extrude and bring it out. And you'll see down here are the, let's expand this out a bit, are the controls for that particular thing. So if you want a little bit more control over what's happening, it's right here. Now there's something to be aware of, and this is very dangerous in Blender. I'm going to sit here. So I've got this face selected, and I just pressed E, okay? And now I click, and I go elsewhere. Well, this was a bit of a trap, because now what I've actually done is I extruded, but I didn't move anywhere. So I just created a set of faces right on top of another face. Very dangerous. So if you use the E key, just know that you are actually extruding, but if you don't use your mouse, you're not moving anything. So you end up with duplicate geometry right on top of each other. So be careful there. So if you hit the E key and you didn't mean to, you should almost always do a Control Z to make sure that it gets rid of it. And I can show you what I mean a little bit more. So here I go, and I hit Control E. Oops. I hit E to extrude. Oh, I didn't mean to actually move my mouse. Control Z. So there, I actually undid. I just undid the move. But see, now if I zoom in here and I switch over to vertex mode, there's actually two sets of vertex sitting on top of each other. Right there. See, very dangerous. You can easily accidentally create geometry over top of other geometry by using extrude wrong. So if you do use it and you didn't mean to, make sure that you do an undo to get rid of it. Basically, you'll tell it by the fact that it popped away from down here. So when I hit extrude, you'll see it popped up here. If I undo it, goes away and back to this mode. So one of those things, be careful of, but sometimes you'll actually, and we'll see this shortly, you want to actually do an extrude without a move. It's a way of creating geometry that doesn't necessarily get offset. Now, most of the time, what you're going to do when you extrude, and by definition, extrude actually means to pull out. So without that movement, it's not really an extrude, but you do sometimes want to create a face that stays in the same spot, which we, again, will see in a little bit. So let's continue on. So that's an extrude, to create new geometry by basically pulling it out of an existing face. Another very, very common thing is a bevel. Now, a bevel is a way of adding rounded edges. And let's grab a face here, and we'll bevel it now. And I'll show you another way of bevel. So there's bevel on here. I never actually used this menu, so I'm not positive it's here. No. So I'll just show you this way. Control F to bring up the faces menu, and bevel. See, I always use the Control B hotkey, and you'll see if you bring these menus up on the right-hand side here, there's the hotkey that goes with it. But in this case, I'm using the face quick menu. So I'm going to do a bevel, and now I'd move my mouse, and you'll see it's kind of creating a new edge and sliding it in. So now we've got this nice little cornered surface. Now let me switch over to vertex mode and show you a different kind of bevel. So we'll grab this top vertex here, like him. And we will do the same thing. So Control V to bring up the vertex menu and bevel. And then as you move the mouse, you'll see there. It's a nice way of adding corners and shape. Just basically, yeah, corners, edges. That's what a bevel is used for. And as you saw, the tool works slightly different if you've got a face selected or if you've got a vertex selected or an edge selected. And let me show you with an edge. Control switch, let's go over to edge. So here, and we'll bring up the Control E to bring up the edge menu. And you will see that bevel is here as well. And then move the mouse slightly. And there you go. So it's really just kind of rounding a corner or adding an edge. And you can also bevel. Blender's pretty smart about this. If you got multiple surfaces selected like so, and here I'll just use Control B this time to do a bevel. And there. So a nice way of adding nice little edges to your corners is to use a bevel. So create new faces by extruding out and then round them off by using a bevel. Now sometimes, however, you want to add your detail at a much more precise level. And there's an option for that as well. And that's the knife tool. Let's switch back to select nothing. And then you just hit K to bring up the knife tool, like so. Or you click knife right here. You can see my icon is turned into like a little X-Acto blade. And I just pick my edge I want to start with. And then drag it over other edges. Like so. And click. And then right click one. Oops. No, it's enter. Sorry. I always switch that hotkey personally. So drag it over the edges you want to cut. Like so. So each one of those green dots is going to be a new vertex. And then left click when done. And then enter. And then that has created a new edge. Very cool. Now also very dangerous. And you're going to see we've done a lot of things here that will actually lead to very poor mesh design. Remember I told you earlier that edge loops are very important. Well, generally when you're working with a mesh surface, you want to use four-sided polygons or less. And what you see here is we've actually got this single face. Let me switch over to face mode and select this guy. This is certainly not a four-sided polygon. In fact, it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-sided polygon. And that is actually kind of impossible because it can be made and bent to be not flat. And let me show you. There you can see perfectly what I mean. It doesn't know how to deal with this weird non-planar edge. And this is going to create weird rendering problems when you actually create your object. If you're working in a game engine, ultimately this all gets turned to polygons anyways. It's going to be go through a process called tessellation, and it is going to be made into probably triangles. So how game engines generally work, OpenGL and such can only really render triangles, or they can do like polygon or quads as well, but generally a quad is just turned into a triangle by dividing it in half anyway. So ultimately you're dealing with triangles. And if you're dealing with something that's not a triangle and it doesn't know how to render it, you can get weird shadowing issues on this. And let's see if it actually shows up. If I go into the material mode, oops, not material. Texture isn't going to show it well. Unfortunately, I deleted my light, so we're not seeing a nuance. Let's go back now. solid. This edge is very confusing to the system. And what you want to do is try to keep this as well defined as you can. And as an example, and I'll show you a new move at the same time, I'll switch back to vertex mode here. And we'll grab him and him. This is the confusing point between our face. It doesn't know how to deal with this because it's not flat. It allows you to move it into impossible areas. And here, I'll actually illustrate a little bit more if I do something weird with this guy. There. He doesn't know how to deal with this because this shape is impossible for it. So all you do is you grab the two vertexes like so, and then hit J. Or is it here as a join? No, I don't think it is. I think if we go to the vertex mode, though, it will be. Yeah, connect. And then I just go pop, and then suddenly it knows what to do. It can deal with this, and it can handle it. Now, you also run into weird situations here, and this is the finicky stuff. I've created a very, actually, that was a very bad, I think I had multiple things selected. Click it. Let's see, vertex mode, click him, and join. All right, much cleaner. Sorry, I had multiple items selected and it was making it not do what I actually meant. Now we've run into a weird situation right here where we probably have more crap going on here than we wanted. So like this guy and this guy, do we really need this extra edge here? Now what happens if we want to get rid of an edge? Well, there's a couple options. You can delete things, and I've been deleting like mad, but I've been deleting entire objects like mad. Well, you can delete components too, or you can dissolve them. And the behavior between those two things is kind of critical to understand. Or you can also merge them. Let me show you first merge. So all of these common faces, we want to turn it into one. So just pick them all, and I'm going to bring up the vertex menu, and I'm going to select merge. And then we're going to merge in the middle. And then boom, you see it all got brought together to one, and now we're dealing with a nice little four-sided, a nice little, actually, sorry, three-side, a three-side, a three-side, and say if we want to fix this guy right here, we'll grab these two, and we'll join it, and we got a nice little three-side. So we got nice, easy shapes, well-defined. You can merge and collapse all of these things together. Now we've got these two guys right here. It's like, is this guy giving us anything? Oh, even better. I've got this garbage going on down here. I've created this weird corner right here. And we want all of those to be, it's just wasted geometry. It doesn't make sense to be as it is. All right, what did I do? All right, come on. Paged way off. It doesn't make sense to be this little triangle in existence. And you can get rid of that face quite simply. And once again, just Control V, merge, and then we'll merge it center, and now it's all in one. Now, let's use a different example. Let's take, actually, this mesh is very confusing to work with. Switch back to object mode, we'll kill it, and we'll go back to a cube. Let's go back into ortho. All right, so now let's add in, start from scratch with a cube. Oops, my pivot wasn't about the origin. So, about there. Okay, so there is our cube. Like so. Let's get rid of an edge instead. Let's go to edit mode, edge mode, select this guy, and we'll hit X. X is your universal delete hotkey, like so. And you will see I can delete an edge, or I can dissolve an edge. And the difference between those two is very profound. I delete an edge, and all the connected faces die. So let's get rid of this edge, and you will see this face and this face can no longer exist because their common edge is gone. So let's do that. We'll do a delete and edge. Boom. That's exactly what happened. See? Now let's undo that and instead hit X and dissolve. And this is going to get rid of the edge, but try to preserve the geometry as best as possible. And what we get then is a triangle. So there is your two different kind of destruction modes. Is you've got delete, which gets rid of it completely, and dissolve, which tries to get rid of it smartly while maintaining a good solid mesh. Now let's go back and I'm going to show you something else really important here. let's go ahead. We'll kill this guy again. So we'll actually delete it. All right. So now we're left with this open box with two sides got. Now what happens if we want to create that again? Well, there's a couple of options here. First thing, I'm going to edge mode here, and we can select the three combined remaining edges, and we can actually create a new polygon by filling it. So Control F, and you'll see there's fill, or there's grid fill, but we want fill. And fill is, actually we want make edge. Weird. I don't actually know what the difference is going to be between those two. But I'll do F, and then boom, we've just created our face back, and then we do the same thing. So click, 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 click. So we've got our bounding faces, and then we just do fill, and oh, that's what it is. All right. So, oops. Click, 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 click. Make face. All right, so that's the difference between fill and faces. The one will fill it. That's why we ended up with a divided surface, whereas make face will actually turn the selection into a face. Hopefully that made sense, the distinguishing factor there. So again, you can dissolve something by clicking it and then deleting it. You can create it back by selecting the bounding points and hitting F to make a face. Same thing, and then F. And then to show you something, there's a little bit of duplication in the way Blender works. So remember when I told you earlier you could select 2 points like this and then do a J to connect them? Well, you can also select 2 points and hit F to connect them. And you end up with pretty much the same thing now. Where you don't probably got is you probably wanted that line to cut across. And that would be where you'd use your knife tool instead of your fill. Because it's not cutting that surface, it's just connecting. It just takes the 2 points and fills between them. But your J for join and your F for connect when dealing with vertices is almost an identical thing. All right, so let's undo that, like so. Now, back towards the beginning of the video, I told you about edge loops and how critically important they are. Well, now I'm going to show you how to add them. And it's very simple. You just hit Control and R. Let's see, I actually have the window highlighted. Control R, and you will see this overlay shows up. And depending on which axis I'm around, it moves accordingly. Okay, so this is adding a new edge loop, which is cutting around the contour as it's defined. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll click once with my left mouse button, and now you can slide it along the contours, like so. All right, so once I've got that, click again, and now we've just inserted a new edge loop. It's a very fast, quick way to add detail to an entire shape, and where it gets a lot more handy. So this edge selector, let's just scale that out a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another edge loop. So Control R, see? Now that slide, though, takes the basic shape and preserves it. Very handy, very fast way to add detail, and you can do it in both directions, and it follows the contour of the underlying shape. So it's another fast way of adding nice clean geometry is by cutting edge loops. Now the downside is you're also adding detail where you may not need it. So that loop goes all the way around the surface. So sometimes you just actually need it to go, say, from here to here to here, and then back up there. In which case you're kind of creating an excess amount of geometry you don't need. But for the most part, unless you have a very good reason, add geometry via edge loops. Really you want to. And then once again, remember, you can do Alt, and then I keep losing focus. All right. Edge mode, click, right? So Alt, click, selects the entire edge loop. And then Control R to add a new one. And then slide, and then click again. Edge loops are a very cool way of adding surface level detail in a very fast, very global manner. At the same time, with this edge loop selected, I can hit X and I can select delete edge loops, and it's gone. So the nice thing is if you're working with an edge loop and you've added a lot of precision to something and you need to get rid of it, it's very fast to get rid of the entire thing you added, not just have to go in and pick each edge as you go. So that's one of the big advantages of working with edge loops is you can make fast, quick edits, both adding and removing. Now, another thing you're going to often want to do is add a lot of detail to an object. So what's very common and I'll show you, actually I won't bother, is to create a very simple shape and then divide it to make it much smoother. Using our example here, let's just grab this one face, and we're going to do, say, a quick finger. So this guy's here, we'll just extrude out like so, extrude out like so, and then one more little extrude. We'll scale that down for the fingertip, like so. And then each one of these corners, say we want it to be a little more rounded. So we'll just switch into edge mode here, and we'll grab, oops, I missed. Grab that guy, grab that guy, grab that guy, grab that guy, and that guy, right? So we get each one of those corners, and we were going to want to bevel that to add a little rounding on the edge, like so, and drag our mouse out. All right, so very quickly, very roughly, we've created, all right, it might be a little phallic too, I didn't mean to do that, but say this was our finger pointing. Now what you're going to want to do a lot of times is add precision or add smoothness to that right away. And that can be done using subdivision. There's two ways of subdividing. One is using operators. I don't think I'm going to have time to cover that. And the other one is to actually divide the mesh, which is quite common. We're going to, one is applied to the entire surface after the fact, and the other one is just adding new geometry. And that's the one we're going to look at today. So let me just go here, and I'll just do a box select around. Shift, I want these guys too. Shift B, come on. What am I doing? Oh, first off, I got it turned off. Here, I'll use clear that selection. Bugger. Come on, get it all. You two, come on. Why am I not getting my face? Hell, I'll do it the whole thing. All right, so I want to add smoothness to this entire thing. What we can do is go into here. I think it's available here. No, it's not. So right here, and I will go to. Wait, why the hell is it not here? So it's under the W menu. Sorry, I'm certain it was there, but it's not. W, and what we want to do is either subdivide or subdivide smooth. It depends on, do you want just more detail or do you want more smooth detail? We want more smooth detail, so we'll go ahead and click that one. And there you see, we've created a nice, more organic shape by doing the subdivision. Now we can keep adding more cuts and getting a smoother surface. And this is how you turn a very simple object into a very smooth object, like so. Now, it's also a very badly formed object. We'll ignore that for now. So I've just been screwing around with it as opposed to a shape you want to do. But subdivision is a way of adding a bunch of detail to a surface very fast. At the same time, I've created something. I've created a monster here. Let's get rid of it. And we'll go back to just a stock cube. Put my pivot back. But you're used to this part by now. Cube. All right. You could also have selected just, I hate when I do that, face, like so. Turn that guy back off. And you could subdivide just it. So hit W, and we'll just do a subdivide. And you'll see we now have 4 where there was 1. And we'll do a subdivide, and we now have 4 within. Now, once again, though, you are creating these weird non-planar shapes, which you kind of generally want to stick away from, because then you can't do weird things like this and create this very strange surface that Blender struggles with, or your game engine struggles with what to do with. But subdivision can definitely be a way of adding detail very fast. Okay, I'm running out of time. I better get. Okay, I guess probably what I'm going to do now is actually show it all together. So I'm going to put it back. I'm going to completely new scene. I'm going to show you how to use some of these things to very quickly model something from scratch so you can see it all working together. And I'm going to show you one other little object option. It shows you how compounded shapes can be put together into a single entity. And that's kind of a confusing thing to get your head around. So I'm going to show you that quickly now. So let's switch back into object mode. So I keep screwing up because I keep losing focus on my window, and then when I come back, my hotkeys aren't working. So in order to give instruction, your mouse actually has to be over the surface, but it also has to be active, and that's something I keep screwing up. So let's end up doing it again. Now tab, let's go to object mode, And we shall delete that sucker, like so. Put our pivot back to normal. And now what we're going to do is model a set of dumbbells, very quick, very fast. And instead of our trusty cube over and over again, this time we're going to actually use a cylinder, like so. Now, we want to modify it a little bit at the object level before we get into editing. And what I want to do is squish it. And this is going to be all stuff we've used already. First thing we're going to do is scale it down the blue axis here, the Z axis. And I'm just going to do scale, so S, hit Z to confine it down that axis. And then I'm just going to make it about that big. All right, so now what I want to do is flip it about 90 degrees this way. So I want to rotate it at about the x-axis here. So that's just R to rotate, X, 90. Okay, so there is 1/2 of a dumbbell. Okay, let's move this guy over a little bit. And now we're going to switch into edit mode, or hit tab. Okay, so first thing we want to do is create a nice little rounded edge for this corner here. That's going to be first, let's get into edge mode, and we will alt click to grab this edge loop right here. And we will do Control E to bring up the edge menu and do a bevel. And let's add a slight bevel, like so. Now on the opposite side, actually, so add our bevel, and then click the interface, so Alt, and then click, and move it out slightly. Now let's grab Alt, click, grab that guy right there, Control E to bring up the edge mode, and then bevel, and then once again, bevel it out a little bit, then Alt, click, bring that guy in, and rotate. All right, so there is our basic weight on one side being modeled. Now what we're going to want to do is create the handle to come out. So Alt-click and grab this loop right here. Remember I told you earlier that sometimes you're going to want to extrude but not actually move. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So just hit the E key and we've just extruded. But we don't want to move the mouse because we don't want to actually pull it out. We want to make this an inset as opposed to an extrude. So that's what we've done. We've just created another loop that's directly over top of the loop we're on. Now what I'm going to do is hit the S key to start scaling our current selection, like so. And just drag your mouse. There you go. So that is the inside of our dumbbell. So let's just scale that a little bit more. There. We're in face mode now, and I want to actually go ahead and I want to get rid of this guy. Okay, so that's hit an X key, and then we are going to delete, not dissolve, delete these faces, like so. Okay, so we got a nice little weight with a hole in it. And now I want another one of these. So let's switch back to the object mode. So we're dealing with the entire entity as a whole, and you hit Shift D, which is duplicate. So now you can't really see it, but there's two of these now. And what we want to do first off is rotate the one about the Z-axis. So rotate Z 180, like so. And now let's move it out a bit. So boom. Now we have two. Very handy, very useful. Now what I'm not showing you, unfortunately, is what they are. So let's bring back our properties window, like so. Oh, no, we don't want properties. My bad. We want outliner. So you can see there's actually two separate objects here, a cylinder that we started with, and then our duplicate over here that we moved and flipped from it. What we want to do now is join these things together. So grab the one, again, we're in object mode, not edit mode, because if I go into edit mode, I can only edit this guy, right? So if I go back out, I select this guy right here, and I go into edit mode, I can only edit this guy. Now what we want to do is have Blender treat them as one entity. So even though they're not physically connected, they're the same thing. So now what we got to do, let's go back to object mode, is shift collect, so we've got both of them in, and just hit Control and J. Or you can do object, let's see, is it actually there? Yeah, join. And that's what we're doing, we're joining these things together. So click, boom. So now we have one object again, with two sets of details. So now we can deal with this guy. If I go back into edit mode, it's one thing. We can edit from either side, which is exactly what we want to do. We want to go in and grab, so go into edge mode, and grab this guy here, and alt-click to get the entire, oops, I missed. A to clear our selection, so alt-click to grab that inner loop, hold down shift, come back over here to this guy, and alt-click. So we've got both of these guys selected. Now what we want to do is go Control E to bring up our edges menu, and we want to do bridge edge loops, like so. click, and then boom, just created a connection between them. Now it actually only created this. This is all like one single polygon grip. So what you want to do sometimes is cut that. So if we want 2 or 3 segments, we just change that here. Let's make that many. Granted, we added a whole lot more objects to our scene, but you can also twist. Not much use in this particular case. Let's cut that back to 2. There we go. So that determines how it's done, but that bridged between these 2 objects, and now we have a dumbbell. Not a particularly great dumbbell, but it does show you how all this stuff goes together to make yourself a nice compound object so out of very, very simple building blocks. Like we built this without explanation. I could have done that in about 40 seconds. And then you just sort of keep adding detail, and that's how you model in, well, any 3D application for the most part. Now, sorry, 1 second. Now I can touch on one last thing. We've got about 4 minutes remaining, and that should be about enough to get what I want in. If I go back to, say we wanted to make this smoother, nicer looking. First off, you'll see it's rendering with these very sharp edges. This is controlled by, oh, come on, click focus. There we go. Grab everybody. The way an edge is actually shown, if it's smooth or not, is controlled by this guy. So if I switch to smooth, you'll see a profound difference in the way things look. There, switch back to object, like so. Switch that back, and then make those into flat again, and then switch back to object. You'll see the difference. So if you don't want this segmented look, it's set by going into shading and either smooth or flat, or a combination thereof. And you can also do it with edges. And you can set an edge as either being, let's see, let's go show edge, and you can make an edge sharp or not sharp. And this is important not for this particularly, but for something called a subdivision surface, which is the last thing we're going to touch on. So earlier we added definition by actually modifying our map. So here we've got all of our faces selected. I'm going to switch over here and we're going to do subdivide again. You see, we added detail to our object by adding detail to our object. We just divided the hell out of it, and we went from, let me show you, right here we have 354 faces. So once we did a subdivision, we have 1,400 faces, and then each iteration adds a whole lot more faces. So now we're up to 88,000. Now you got a lot more detail and very much nicer precision object, but it's at a cost. Now, this is a straight forming of the mesh modifier we're adding, but a lot of times you actually are creating a cage and you want to just add that after the fact. And this is built right into Blender. I'm not going to show you it that way because it's a little confusing. However, if I go here, I'll go back to, I've modified that. Here, I'll go to properties. Here we go over here under this little wrench icon here. And let me just undo the damages we did here. So we're back to a non-smoothed out object. Let's go to edit mode. So we're dealing with this whole entity. You can add a modifier to it. In this case, we are going to add a subdivision surface modifier, like so. And that is kind of doing the same thing. This is subdividing the cage, but the cool thing is modifiers are added to the object after the fact. They're not destroying it, they're changing it. And the order that you add, you can keep adding more multipliers, and they will modify the previous modified thing in the stack. So you can see here, I can switch the values by going up and down, or I can have it, while I'm working on it, being low detail, but when I actually render it, being higher detail. This is a very handy thing. Now, if I click this apply button, there's no longer a modifier, and it actually just changed it completely. But I can also turn it off. You see, we've done no damage at all. Or I can just get rid of it, and it's gone completely. And you can stack these modifiers. And some of these are really kind of handy, way beyond what we want to talk about. Like decimate is the opposite of subdivide. It's if you've got a really high detail and you want to take some away, you can apply a deciply modifier. Or I could actually do an array, and then we'll end up with, let's see, a whole whack of them. But this is applied to the object as a whole, and it is non-destructive. So if I click here, it goes away, and I'm back to where I started from. So when you're dealing with a surface, a lot of times you will want to use either subdivision, you'll subdivide it directly, or you can do something called a subdivision surface, which subdivides your result and finishes it after. Now, sometimes you want a sharp edge, and you'll see, actually I'm not going to have time to explain that. Sometimes when you want an edge to be crisp, but subdivision doesn't know that. That's where it comes back to that whole, let's see, grab some edge. Here, there, bring up our edge menu. That is where this mark sharp comes in. So when you want it to subdivide, but you want to treat it as a crisp edge, you mark it as sharp, apply your subdivision, and it will be a nice crisp edge. So here, mark sharp, that is now a sharp edge. I go ahead, I add a subdivision to it, like so, and you'll see it is sharp. So that's how you control a crisp edge on a smooth model. All right, that is it. I am at 1 hour. I am done. I hope that was useful to you. I can give you a quick recap. I won't count it as a time. Pretty much, you start with very simple shapes. You can modify them. You are either in object mode or edit mode. When you are in edit mode, you are working with vertices, edges, or faces. Your most common modifiers to be using on those are extrudes, bevels, fills, and deletes. Using that combination of things along with edge loop insertion and the knife tool, you can make just about any shape starting from a very simple shape and just kind of building it. Once you've got the outline you want, you can either subdivide it, like you see here, using a modifier, or you can subdivide it destructively using the W menu and bringing up the subdivide or subdivide smooth option, and that adds more detail, but it also adds more faces. So that's going to take longer to render. Hope you enjoyed that. See you later.